radio check. Loud, clear.
This plane is the U.S. Navy's eyes in the sky, and right now they're doing surveillance and reconnaissance.
Tonight, Norah O'Donnell has rare access on board a U.S. Navy patrol flight over the Red Sea amid fears of a widening war in the region.
How often are these P-8s flying over the Red Sea and Houthi territory?
Almost all day, every day.
Plus, the families of those 3 U.S. soldiers killed in Jordan share their grief.
I never imagined something like this could happen to my daughter.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Major Garrett, in for Nora, who, as you saw, is on assignment. Tonight, we are surveying the deteriorating situation in the Middle East, from the Red Sea to Gaza to Iran. This as the bodies of 3 soldiers killed in Jordan prepare to make their way back to the United States. First, Israeli special forces disguised as medical workers and civilians storm a hospital in the West Bank and kill 3 suspected militants. And negotiations continue for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war and the release of the remaining hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza. Plus, CBS News is over the Red Sea with the U.S. Navy as it protects American interests in the region, including from attacks by Iranian-backed Houthi militia. Nor is on board a surveillance plane with the commander of the U.S. 5th Fleet and Naval Forces Central Command as they gather intelligence. But we begin tonight with President Biden saying he's decided on the U.S. response to a drone attack that killed those 3 U.S. service members. The president said he holds Iran responsible, but warns that the world does not need a wider conflict in the Middle East. CBS's David Martin is at the Pentagon with the military options and their potential fallout.
President Biden told reporters he has made up his mind how to retaliate for the drone attack which killed 3 American soldiers in Jordan.
Yes.
Have you not told Iran responsible for the death of those 3 Americans?
I do hold them responsible in the sense that they're supplying the weapons to the people who did it.
In an apparent attempt to head off U.S. airstrikes, the Iranian-backed militia the U.S. blames for Sunday's deadly attack announced it was suspending military operations against American forces. The Pentagon spokesman responded by noting there have been 3 more attacks on U.S. troops since the drone strike in Jordan.
I don't think we could be any more clear that we have called on the Iranian proxy groups to stop their attacks. They have not, and so we will respond in a time and manner of our choosing.
The U.S. military is rushing additional air defenses to that base in Jordan, which officials acknowledge had not been as well protected against drone attack as American troop locations across the border in Iraq and Syria. Sunday was the first time the outpost, known as Tower 22, had been attacked. The drone came in low and slow shortly after parts of the air defense system had been taken offline to allow a returning American drone to land safely. It was not detected in time and hit the sleeping quarters while troops were still in their beds.
Officials say plans call for the U.S. to launch a real bombing campaign, not just another round of one-and-done retaliatory strikes of the kind it has conducted so far. Once it begins, the bombing is likely to continue for a number of days. Major?
At the Pentagon for us, David Martin, thank you. Tonight, we are learning more about the 3 soldiers killed in Jordan. Army specialists Breonna Moffett and Kennedy Sanders were posthumously promoted to sergeant today. CBS's Manuel Bajorquez spoke to Sanders' parents about how they hope their daughter will be remembered.
Disbelief, shock, anger. I have so many questions.
A heartbroken Oneida Sanders says her daughter, 24-year-old Army Reserve Sergeant Kennedy Sanders, was set to return home in August and already had plans to take the next step in her military career.
What do you want the world to know about her?
That Kennedy was full of life. She was a breath of fresh air. She was so likable by so many people.
Sanders was one of 3 service members killed in the attack, along with 23-year-old Breonna Moffett and 46-year-old William Rivers, all Army reservists at Fort Moore, Georgia. Before traveling to Florida today, the White House said President Biden spoke to all 3 families separately to extend his condolences and offer his support.
He made it very personal, and I really felt that he had a sense of compassion for us as the family.
The Sanders learned today of their daughter's posthumous promotion to the rank of sergeant to recognize her courage and sacrifice.
I really knew what that meant to her because she was working towards, getting that promotion. And that was one of the most special moments in this whole encounter that, and they come from the President of the United States.
The bodies of the fallen service members are expected to arrive at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware on Friday, their coffins draped in the American flag. The families say President Biden asked if he could join them there, and they all said yes. Major?
Manuel Bojorquez, thank you. The Department of Defense says Iranian-backed Houthi militias have attacked or threatened commercial cargo vessels and U.S. Navy ships 36 times since November. The most recent attack just 3 days ago. Nora is in the region for 60 Minutes and has a rare first-hand look at how the U.S. military is protecting American interests in the Middle East, including the Red Sea.
Our journey to the Red Sea started in Bahrain, where we boarded a P-8 aircraft for a reconnaissance flight.
This plane is the U.S. Navy's eyes in the sky, and right now they're doing surveillance and reconnaissance. It's all sort of gathering intelligence over the Red Sea. How often are these P-8s flying over the Red Sea and Houthi territory?
Every day, almost all day, every day.
Vice Admiral Brad Cooper is in charge of the 5th Fleet and Naval Forces Central Command. Their key mission right now, defending commercial vessels and protecting Navy ships from Iranian-backed Houthi missiles and drones.
We have to have this thick layer of defense in place 24/7, and everyone has to be ready 24/7. Now, the good news is the United States Navy is operating today at the very top of our game. Where there are questions about our readiness, there should be no questions.
But yet the Houthis are still able to attack.
They're still able to attack, but it's been diminished. If they continue to attack, I think we will continue to diminish their capability to do so.
The U.S. military has shot down 80 Houthi missiles and drones over these vital shipping lanes that carry 15% of global trade.
We're here inside the cockpit. We're currently cruising at about 28,000 feet, but we are going to descend to 500 feet above the water to get a very clear picture of what is happening on the Red Sea. So would you be able to see from a plane like this whether Iran is transporting more of those anti-ship ballistic missiles to Yemen?
This plane clearly plays a role in it. It has played a role in it in virtually every interdiction we've had during the last couple of years. This aircraft has played a central role in that process.
Just one capability that makes this a useful asset in the Navy's current fight. Nora O'Donnell, CBS News, over the Red Sea.
In a dramatic raid today, Israeli troops disguised as civilian women and medical workers stormed a hospital in the West Bank and killed 3 suspected terrorists. A hospital official says there was no exchange of gunfire. Israel says the militants were using the hospital as a hideout and that one militant had been involved in previous attacks. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Monday there's, quote, real hope for a Gaza hostage deal. Even so, lengthy multi-nation talks have yet to produce a breakthrough. Back here in Washington, House Republicans are moving toward the impeachment of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas in a dispute over the migrant crisis at the southern border. CBS's Nicole Killian reports today's impeachment hearing comes as the Senate nears a bipartisan deal to tighten border security.
We cannot allow this man to remain in office any longer. The time for accountability is now.
The head of the House Homeland Security Committee said Republicans had no other choice but to bring forth articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, claiming a dereliction of duty at the U.S.-Mexico border.
You don't want solutions, you just want politics.
Democrats accuse the GOP-led panel of having no evidence of high crimes and misdemeanors.
The sham impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas is a baseless political stunt.
The articles include willful and systemic refusal to comply with the law and breach of public trust. They allege the secretary obstructed congressional oversight and failed to rein in record migrant crossings, which topped 10,000 per day last month. Texas Congressman Tony Gonzalez represents Eagle Pass at the epicenter.
Why you do think the secretary's impeachment is warranted?
It is very clear that whatever DHS is doing, they need to do something different.
Mayorkas defended the Biden administration's policies, noting it has removed, returned, or expelled more migrants in 3 years than the Trump administration.
I've done all I can do. Just give me the power.
Today, President Biden said there is nothing more he can do through executive action and implored Congress to pass a border security deal. But House Speaker Mike Johnson reiterated any potential compromise in the Senate may be dead on arrival.
And the president can take executive authority immediately, and he's pretending as though he does not know that. It's outrageous.
The White House is criticizing House Republicans for threatening to block a potential package while at the same time calling for border fixes. Some Democrats call it hypocritical since Mayorkas helped craft that deal and now appears on the verge, potentially, of impeachment in the House. Major.
Nicole Killian, thank you. Prosecutors in Michigan today showed jurors police photos from the home of the teenage gunman who killed 4 fellow students at Oxford High School in 2021. Inside Ethan Crumbley's messy room, paper targets with bullet holes and an empty whiskey bottle. The case that held the murder weapon purchased as a gift days before the shootings, open and empty on his parents' bed. His mother, Jennifer Crumbley, now on trial for involuntary manslaughter, told police on the day of the murders that her son had never been in trouble, despite having been called to the school hours earlier to discuss a violent drawing he had made. She has pleaded not guilty. Tonight, we're getting an exclusive up-close look at the inspections that are being made to Alaska Airlines' fleet of Boeing 737 MAX 9s. The inspections were ordered after a door panel blew off mid-flight earlier this month. CBS's Chris Van Cleve shows us how these new safety checks work.
We're on board an Alaska Airlines 737 MAX 9 awaiting an inspection. It's our first up-close look at the door panels and bolts now at the center of the NTSB investigation into what went wrong on Alaska Flight 1282 when one of those door panels, known as a plug, blew out mid-flight earlier this month. Jason Lai leads Alaska's engineering team.
You're checking for all the hardware, make sure they're in place, make sure all the hardware are tight. We have found some loose bolts and we need to document those.
How common has that been during your inspection?
More than we would like. There have been quite a few aircraft where we have found loose bolts, but what I will say, Chris, is there's been no aircraft with bolts missing.
It's about a 12-hour process to inspect one of these door panels. First, you have to remove 2 rows of seats plus all the cabin interior just to get to the door panel. You're going to check the 4 key bolts that hold this in place, but then there's also 20 pages of measurements that have to happen before that plug can be deemed safe and this airplane put back into service.
When the MAX 9 was grounded, Alaska's fleet was scattered across the country, in Hawaii, Belize, and the Caribbean, tracking the effort to get them inspected. Through necessary maintenance checks and to where they're needed for passenger flights happens here in the airline's Network Operations Center.
We had to make sure that we had a safe and compliant path forward to operating these airplanes. So we did take it very slow and steady.
Brett Payton runs the NOC and is also a 737 captain.
What is your level of confidence in the MAX 9 today?
100%. I just had a new granddaughter 3 months ago, and my first granddaughter, and I'd put her on the airplane today.
Back in the air today, with all eyes on the 737 MAX 9. Chris Van Cleve, CBS News, Seattle.
According to recent studies, the #1 cause of mental health issues in teenagers is the negative impact of social media. Tomorrow, the CEOs of 5 of the biggest tech companies like Meta and TikTok will be on Capitol Hill to face a grilling on what they're doing to protect children. CBS's Jolene Kent examines online dangers that can have fatal consequences.
This is one of our favorites.
For Tammy Rodriguez, online safety for kids is a matter of life and death.
Selena was wonderful. All you saw was that smile.
Her 11-year-old daughter, Selena, died by suicide after an extreme social media addiction led to sexual exploitation by online predators.
I had no idea that it could get to that. You know, these are things that are all hidden in the background. These big tech companies, they know exactly how to make it work for them, and the parents don't know what's going on.
The Senate Judiciary Committee has summoned the CEOs of TikTok, Snap, X, Meta, and Discord to testify on what it says is their failure to protect children online. Democratic Chair Dick Durbin and Republican Ranking Member Lindsey Graham sat down with CBS News for an exclusive joint interview.
Whose responsibility is it to keep kids safe online?
Is it the tech companies? Is it the parents?
The parents are fighting a losing battle. Parents doing their very best cannot keep up with this technology. And these companies have the singular responsibility to police this.
The committee's goal, pass comprehensive regulations and amend Section 230, a law that shields most tech giants from being sued by users.
I can't believe that in America in 2024, the largest businesses in the history of mankind, social media, are unregulated. There's not one law on the books protecting consumers, and you can't sue them.
The fact of the matter is, we're going to do something.
And Rodriguez will be watching.
Why is it important for you to be here for this hearing?
Because we're Selena's voice now. That's why.
In the lead up to this Senate hearing, 3 tech companies, Snap, Meta, and X, have issued a flurry of changes and announcements for teenage users. Meantime, the 5 tech CEOs are going to sit right here tomorrow, facing off with senators under oath. Major?
Jolene Kent, thank you. A plane crashes at a busy intersection in California. The details next. The pilot of a small plane was killed in a crash today near an airport in the San Francisco Bay Area. Video from the scene shows the plane at an intersection, not far from the runway. Police say another vehicle was involved. The driver suffered minor injuries. No word yet on what caused the wreck. Broadway legend Chita Rivera has died. We'll remember her greatest performances next. The lights of Broadway will soon be dimmed in honor of legendary stage star Chita Rivera, who died today.
Could be the start of something. Could be the start of something good.
Rivera was an acclaimed dancer, singer, and actor who first played Anita in West Side Story, Rose in Bye Bye Birdie, and Velma in Chicago. The multiple Tony Award winner also received a Kennedy Center honor and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Former President Obama called Rivera sassy and electric, noting how she not only survived a car crash that left her with pins and plates in her leg, but went on to win a Tony for her starring role in Kiss of the Spider-Woman. In one of her last interviews, Rivera spoke about her perseverance last year with CBS Sunday Morning.
I do believe that being a dancer gave me the ability to fight and to withstand and to cope. If I come back, I want to come back a dancer. That'll be my second life.
Chita Rivera was 91. The final liftoff of Space Shuttle Endeavour is next, thanks to a feat of engineering you have to see to believe.
If you can't watch the CBS Evening News, you can listen. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Finally tonight, Space Shuttle Endeavour flew nearly 123 million miles during its 19-year career. Now it's ready for a new mission, inspiring the next generation. CBS's Elise Preston explains.
We watched the Endeavour blast off into space for 25 missions. Now the shuttle's mission is to tower over Los Angeles, the first spacecraft in the world to be displayed in launch position. Ken Phillips dreamed of this 34 years ago.
Did you think that it would be this long?
I thought it would be a piece of paper, quite frankly, and I had no idea what it would take to move an object of that size.
It weighs more than 173,000 pounds, and for the last couple weeks, crews at the California Science Center installed the shuttle's external tank and rocket motors. Today, they delicately fuse the orbiter with all of its parts. NASA retired the Endeavour in 2011. The museum hopes this impressive site in South Los Angeles will spark an interest in space exploration.
I think many people, especially those who are underserved in science and technology, will look at something like this. They'll marvel at it. They will assume they can't become a part of it. And that's what we're trying to change.
A wonder of the world, now accessible to all. Elise Preston, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And that is tonight's CBS Evening News. For Nora O'Donnell, I'm Major Garrett. Good night.